questions. The purpose of this session is to talk about preparing a poster abstract, and it's the first of two sessions that we are planning to do with the writing group, Early Career Scholars, and ASOR. Sorry, I've just been going on very confidently. I just want to confirm that everyone can hear me. Um, if there's an issue, please let me know either in the chat or just unmute yourself. I'm getting thumbs up, and then a little chat box is stuck. That's just my computer. Okay, wait, maybe we can. Okay. I apologize. The chat thing at the top is frozen for me. If there's a problem, just unmute yourself. But I saw a thumbs up and yes, so my apologies on that adjudication of this situation. Okay, so as I was saying before I got distracted, we will, yeah, my sincere apologies. I can't access the chat at this moment, but when I'm done speaking, I'll be able to. Um, two sessions. This is the first one about writing the abstract. The second one will be based around preparing the actual poster itself. We'll go over examples of what effective posters look like and how to compose one. We'll also talk a little bit about the programs used to make those. But today we're going to talk about the poster abstract and presenting and submitting that poster abstract. So it's good to know what our destination is before we begin. So what is a poster? What is it that we are proposing an abstract for? And it's a large-scale visual summary of research. One of the things that I really appreciate about posters is that they lend themselves very well to studies of the ancient past and archaeology because it's about showing visuals, showing data, and brief, punchy conclusions. Posters are meant to be quick format and pretty easy to understand. You might get a scholar standing there lost in the majesty of your poster for up to 4 minutes, but nobody is spending much more time than that really looking at it. And it's a takeoff discussion point for you and other researchers and for people to ask you more questions about your research. So they're great for preliminary results, for ongoing projects, for pilot studies, for papers that you might have done as part of your semester or studies, final excavation results, final analysis, things along those lines. They're large scale, so we're looking at 36 to 48 inches, and they can take on a variety of topics and also styles. A few of these are done by myself and my colleagues, so we've kind of converged on a certain style, but we can see that you can also put photos in the background and present data in different kinds of ways. So this is what we are moving towards. Posters will generally have an introduction, a description of the materials or methods, the results, and the conclusions, and look something like this. So they're meant to be taken in quickly. I'm going over this part of the discussion rather quickly because this will be the substance of the next session that we run in the fall. Once the abstracts have been settled and you are beginning to draft your poster, we'll get more into sort of the nuts and bolts of what is going on here, but it's good to know where we're going in writing the abstract itself. So that is what the, I guess, finished product will look like. At ASOR, posters are presented during the poster session. And so there is an hour and a half put aside on Saturday around lunchtime when you are asked to stand next to your posters. Everyone who has brought a poster is asked to stand next to it, and people come and cycle throughout the poster room. Usually, and I think in Chicago, there is a room that all the posters will be set up in. What I'll say now is that there's that hour and a half on Saturday when you stand by your poster. But the magic of a poster, in my opinion, is putting it up on Wednesday and letting it sit in that room so that when people are taking a moment or just turning the floor during the conference, they can stand and look and read your poster in a quiet setting and take it in. And those opportunities and leaving your poster up from Wednesday until Saturday are a really good way to build connections with people. So the highlight of the conference will be the poster session on Saturday, but I recommend that you put it up on Wednesday and leave it up all week for maximum impact. The poster session itself is well attended and people come and chat and ask you questions about your poster. I started doing this as a master's student, undergrads do it as well, and established scholars. So it's a nice space for discussion. And it's also low stakes. You're having one-on-one conversations with people who are interested in your research as opposed to standing on a podium and delivering a presentation to a large group simultaneously. But the content of today's topic, as I've said, is actually composing the abstract. And we'll take some time to do some writing as well at the end of this spiel. So, composing an abstract. The abstract that you submit is going to go into the ASOR Annual Meeting abstract book, which at this point is the abstract app, but the description will be available to everyone who is registered in the conference. The other important function that the abstract holds is you telling the conference what it is you want to present. And this is just us making sure that the research is thought out or exists. Often the abstracts that come through for the posters, very few are, let's say, rejection isn't the issue. It's about sculpting the research into something that is ready to be presented as a poster. So if you choose to submit an abstract, I'll be the one reviewing it. I'll take a look at it, and then I will ask you any follow-up questions that we need in order for the research to be sound. But this is a very, let's say, welcoming abstract process. The pieces that you want to have in your abstract, for me, who is adjudicating the abstracts, as well as in the book for your audience that's going to be looking at them, is the topic. You want to be clear about what it is you're talking about. Also, explicitly give the location, and location can be as specific as a site location or as general as a country or a region, but we need to know where the material is coming. The time periods are important because that's what's going to draw in a lot of people. It's usually either methods or region and time period that people find commonality and interest in. The purpose or significance of the poster, and then the material and methods that you're using. If you hit these five pieces of information, then we can assess what the research is about and we can welcome your poster into our poster session. The maximum number of words is 250. And I'll just emphasize here now that brevity is very, very welcome. So if you can express what your poster is about in less than 250 words, please feel very free to do so. Something succinct and punchy is great. If you need all 250 words, they are there for you. So feel free to use that. So that's the information that we would want to have in an abstract. And then this is what the abstracts look like when they're published in the book. The other purpose that this abstract holds is that it provides a framework for your poster and your writing. So in a lot of ways, this abstract is you bringing those ideas together for the first time, and then you're going to use those ideas to then create your poster in the future. So yeah, brevity is appreciated, and please include the topic, location, time period, purpose, and then materials and or methods, however that makes sense for you in that context. In preparing this, what I've gone over here is sort of what you need to know to get started. Beyond that, it's about knowing your research and beginning to write it into this format. But I thought what might be
Yeah.
valuable.
Because they're like only soil.
Hey, excuse me, Zainab. Yeah. Okay, cool. All good. I thought what would be valuable would be to just read through some abstracts from the abstract book from last year. So I have four that touch on different types of research that members of ASOR do, and I've underlined some of the pieces of information that are important to me as the person reading the abstracts to have. So I'm just going to go through and physically read through these four abstracts, and then we'll sort of be at the end of my speaking part. So sit back, relax, and take notes as I go through what I deem to be like pretty good abstracts. I think also if you read through the abstract book in the poster section, they all read very well and very similarly. And that's part of my job is when you submit an abstract is to make sure that it is sort of its best version. That's something that I will work with you on if it is necessary. It is often not necessary. So let's go forward because I can talk laterally for a long time. As I said, here are a series of um, examples of good abstracts. So this one's called Overturned Stones, Tracking Site Preservation at the Wadi Jadid Dolmen Field. And the abstract reads as such. Um, the Muslubia, or Wadi Jadid Dolmen Field, is a substantial field of early Bronze Age megalithic structures located within Wadi Jadid on the edge of the western Jordanian highlands as they extend westward towards the Jordan Valley. These structures were first scientifically recorded by Claude Condor in 1889 survey of Eastern Palestine and has seen several subsequent phases of site visit and documentation since. With advances in archaeological recording technology and rapidly increasing threats to the site from modern development, the Town of Nebo Archaeological Project, TNAP, conducted a brief but intensive survey of the Dolmen Field in the summer of 2025. This survey focused on documentation for the purpose of recording feature preservation, as well as high-resolution recording for analytical purposes. Through this intensive survey, 158 features were recorded by TNAP using analog digital materials, facilitating the combination of all data available from previous surveys, culminating in an increased understanding of the scale and timing of the destruction on site. This poster presents some of the initial findings from this intensive survey, presenting a timeline of the destruction, potential means of limiting further impact, and some initial analytical observations. So in this case, we have the location set out for us, as well as what they did and what the materials that they came out with were. So the main parts are underlined. These abstracts are available in the 2025 ASOR abstract book as well. And if you are still considering or struggling to write an abstract, I think going back to those and finding one that resembles your research and building your structure and verbiage off of that is always something useful, which is why I'm going through and reading these here now so that they're in this presentation. But going through that abstract book is a good way to approach writing abstracts. And I would argue it's a good way to approach writing abstracts for all conferences because there's sometimes slight stylistic shifts. And by being able to pull that up, you can make your expression match what is standard for that research group. Anyway, hot tip. So a very different project in this abstract called Bricks and Boards, the Games of Kurd Kabristan. Kurd Kabristan is a 100-hectare archaeological site located in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. Over 5 seasons, 5 game boards have been discovered, 3 baked bricks incised with the game of 20 squares dating to the Middle Bronze Age, and 2 clay boards of the game 58 holes dating to the Late Bronze Age. The game of 20 squares originated from southern Iraq in the mid-3rd millennium BC, while the game of 58 holes was invented in Egypt during the late 3rd millennium BC. Both games' presence in northern Iraq in the 2nd millennium BC contexts demonstrates a process of cultural transmission over distance and time. Of the 3 Middle Bronze Age games, 2 were found in the site's palace and 1 in a domestic context. The Late Bronze Age games were found in similar contexts to one another, but with striking stylistic differences, with one game taking the form of an anthropomorphic plaque. The poster will provide direct visual comparison of the stylistic qualities of the game, their find spots on the site, as well as comparanda from across the ancient Near East. So in this case, we're looking at a specific category of finds that were found during excavation over a long period of time and presenting an initial analysis of these pieces sort of in their as I said, archaeological context and greater context in the Near East. So that would be another example of a strong and very accessible abstract. This is the kites in context. I'm not going to read this one. I think it reads very similarly to some combination of the first two. But just once again to point out that the abstract has given me the topic. It's the desert kites, or given us the topic. It's the desert kites in Jordan's Eastern Badia, just underlined. So topic and location. The time period is the Neolithic, which we can surmise at the bottom, but also the desert kites are known to be from a specific period. And then we also have the purpose and the material. So the material is looking at sampling two different kites as well as excavating a large structure. And then the materials also fall into that. So while I've given these 5 categories, some of them will overlap. For example, your topic, significance, and material may be something that's expressed as one thought. So this is another example with the Kites in Context project. And if you want to read it more closely, it can be found in the abstract book. Okay. And then this abstract is a little different because it is looking at a specific spell in the Book of the Dead. So I'll read through this one as well because it reads rather different than the other two. So, okay, I can't see the title the way my screen is set up, but title. This poster explores the role of offerings in the Book of the Dead spell 110, BD 110, and presents a new interpretation of key passages of the text in its vignette. Traditionally, BD 110 has been understood as providing a literal description of the afterlife, particularly through the vignette, which is often interpreted as a direct representation of the deceased's journey. However, this study proposes a shift in focus, arguing that the primary thematic element in BD 110 is the cycle of offering that connects the deceased, the divine, and the living. Contrary to earlier interpretations, emphasizing the material substance provided to the deceased through close examination of BD 110's text and vignettes, this poster presentation argues that in the cycle, offerings were not only physical but also symbolic, emphasizing the conceptual significance of offerings. For the deceased, offerings play a role in maintaining social relationships and ensuring their continued participation in the human life cycle. For the living, the act of offering establishes a personal connection with the ancestors, who in turn provide guidance and support. BD 110, however, only offers one half of the offering cycle, the perspective of the deceased. The other half, involving the living, actively giving offerings to the ancestors, is not directly recorded in the spells themselves. Instead, this aspect of the cycle is evidenced through archaeological finds that showcase cultural practices, showing that the living play an essential role in the cycle, fulfilling their ancestors' requests in the hope of receiving benefits in return. So I included this abstract as well because this is a more literary analysis and more of a socio-cultural interpretation. So while the other ones were sort of archaeological material from the field very directly, this is more of an archival analysis, and it's also very appropriate for posters. You can do things like emphasize certain lines of text very large and use visuals to tell the story that is being alluded to in this situation. Okay, so that is the overview of, let's say, the substance of what abstracts tend to look like at an ASOR conference. I can see that there is at least one question in the chat, and as I said, it's frozen. So I'll return to that. My apologies. I'll return to that at the end of the presentation fully when I can. Anyway, technical issues, unfreeze my screen. So yeah, that's the substantive part of the meat of how to write an abstract. And my advice is either go back to this presentation and look at them, pause them as you're writing, or look at the abstract book. And I believe that I can put a link into the chat. Oh, I
I
have it
actually
right
put a link
here.
in the chat already. That was what
Ah,
the question was. They,
perfect.
yeah.
Oh, okay, amazing. This is why we're very grateful for Reagan. Reagan's on top of things. So if you want to see the abstracts, they are in the chat and they are under the poster session section of the book. Thank you, Reagan. Okay, so that is the substantive part. This next part is the nuts and bolts of how do we submit a poster to the annual meeting. Frequently, when I've been in the position to submit, I am submitting on the submission day, and I just kind of figure it out as I go, which has always worked out because it's a very intuitive system, which we are grateful for. So just to quickly take you through it, if you start from the ASOR website homepage, this is how you would get to the poster submission. If you're clicking through a poster submission link, it'll take you somewhere into this chain. So you begin by clicking on the annual meeting button at the top, which is pretty intuitive. And then in the bottom left, we have the 2026 call for posters, which I'm sure everyone here would have figured out anyway. That then brings you to the poster page, which has information, including some hyperlinks to what is a good poster, poster evaluation criteria, all of which we will go over in this series in the fall specifically. That's when it becomes relevant. But what you want to do is get to ASOR's online portal. And so there's a hyperlink for that under the Are you ready to submit your poster abstract? Once you click on that, you'll be taken to the portal home. And you need to register for the annual meeting and register as an ASOR member. This would include as well institutional affiliations. So if you are working with a professor who's also a member of ASOR, check with them to see if your school has institutional affiliation, which would cover your membership to ASOR, and then you pay for registration. Anyway, once you have completed registration, at the top, there will be the option for the abstract center. And if you hover over it, there is the submit a poster abstract option that comes up. And then you click on that. When you click on that, it will take you to what is on the rest of the screen here, which is the poster submission. And it is magically straightforward, very simple. First name, last name, email address, the title of your poster, and then the abstract text for your poster. If your poster has special symbols or characters, due to translation, transliteration, what have you, there's a box below this where you can upload a Word document so that those special characters aren't stripped out. But that is basically, that's it. Yeah, but that is the submission process. So once you get to the poster abstract page, it is your name, author, other co-authors' names, and the body of your text that just go in there. Um, as far as some limits, I believe everyone can only be first author on one poster in the poster session. So you can only be first author on one poster, and your name can only appear in the program 3 times. So then you can, anyway, use your other two however you like, but you can only submit one poster as first author for the ASOR conference. That's a submission. And then, yeah, to wrap it up for me, these are the important dates. So abstract submission is August 1st. And then we get into things that are very far away and we'll talk about beforehand if you join us for our other session. But all posters need to be uploaded to the online PDF gallery November 4th. So the date that your poster needs to be complete is November 4th. And then the in-person display will be on November 18th to 21st. So for that date, November 18th, you need your poster printed and with you in Chicago, unless you are only presenting online. And then November 21st, will be the in-person poster session, and we'll all be milling around and seeing each other's research, and we'll have a great fall.